Hello. In this video, before we jump into Flexbox, I want to review some of the other display types. So here's our example file. It's very simple. We got H1, H2, a paragraph, a button, and a kitten image. Different elements have different display types by default. So for example, the H1 tag here, if I make the background color of pink, it is a block level element. And so what a block level, its default setting is display block. And so what that means is it will automatically take the entire width of the viewport and the next element will stack underneath it, right? So that's a block. That is the kind of behavior of a lot of elements, and it's kind of what makes it possible to build websites, because we can kind of stack these blocks on top of each other. Also, the H2 is also a block level element. Light. Blue. All right, see, same thing. It goes all the way across. And so is the paragraph. If I add a comma, it will include the paragraph there, right? Okay, so we could treat it as a different display type. If we look down here, the next element we have is a button, and the button is not a block level element. It doesn't automatically push all the way across and then pop the next item down. It is an inline block element. And so, like, to show you how the button is behaving, we can change the display type of our attributes. So here, I'm going to take my paragraph out for a sec. If we say for our H2, display inline block, and we also say, add the same thing to our H1, then it pops up, right? Then they kind of stack next to each other. So we have block and inline block. H1s, H2s, paragraphs, those are all block level elements. Divs are block level elements. Buttons and images are inline blocks. So then what is an inline element? And what's the difference between an inline block and an inline? Well, let's make an inline element and see what the difference is. So an example of something that's inline by default is emphasis or strong. So if I put this in here, it's going to italicize my text. Can also put a background color to see what's happening. Okay, so like, what is the difference between this and these? Well, the difference is an inline block, you still have access to the box model, and the elements will respect what you do with the box model. So for example, in here, if I make the padding, 25 pixels, and so I made the padding 25 pixels, and I can make it transparent so you can kind of see what's happening here. It's moving around the text, but it's not actually pushing anything else out of the way. Whereas if I take my button and stick it over here somewhere, and add some padding to my button, I'll take the same settings here. I don't have any selector on my button yet. When I add padding, it pushes the other elements away, right? Right. In the button, it respects the box model setting. Here, I'll move it over here so it's less confusing. Whereas in an inline element, it doesn't. See, it doesn't push the other stuff out of the way. And there's really not that many different types of display. So we have block, inline, inline block. None is a really handy one because what none does is it removes the element from the viewport and allows the other stuff to kind of flow back as if it never existed. And that can be a really useful thing when we're building responsive layouts. Later on, often in mobile, we need to simplify elements. So let's look at that. Display none, and then the button disappears. Okay, so we have block level elements, which are super handy and awesome. We have inline elements, which are really great for styling text and adding things within text elements. We have inline block, and we see how those behave. Those are kind of less handy than some of the other things we'll see later. And then finally, we have flex and grid, and those are a little bit more elaborate and will be the topic of several more videos. Okay.